All right, for our virtual field trip this week, we're going to be staying in my backyard and working on keying out some of the trees with the tree key that is in your book. So this is in your red manual, the Pohar Plants of the Pacific Northwest Coast. You were supposed to find this tree key for part of your homework, and now we're going to work on how to go through this key with some of the plants that we have. So the first plant that I've got for us, I've collected a few specimens. So we're going to try this one through the key. So we look at the first part of the key, leaves, needle-like or scale-like, evergreen, seeds usually in cones, not enclosed in a fruit, so meaning conifers. Now I could not find the cones on the particular tree near my house, so there's no cones on this plant at present, but we will see them on future field trips. But the other part, 1B, if we look over to where 1B, leaves broad, except for arbutus, the other one that we're going to see later. So these are definitely not leaves broad. These are needle-like or scale-like, so we're going to take 1A in the key. Then we go to 2A, leaves scale-like, concealing the twigs. And if you look at these are what we consider scale-like leaves. They are pressed down to the branch. You really can't see the branch. All you're seeing is these scale-like leaves covering the branch, kind of like reptile scales, if you want to think about it that way. And so that fits the character that we have here in 2A. If you notice, 2B says leaves needle-like. These are not needle-like. And so if we follow 2A, we find that it is Thuya plicata, the scientific name, Thuya plicata. And this is our western red cedar, a tree that we will see quite commonly in our area. This was an important tree to the Native Americans. It has the peeling bark on larger trees. You can see that peeling reddish bark starting on the lower part of this twig here. So that's a characteristic that you will find on these. And unfortunately, our book that we're using doesn't give us the family names for all of our plants. At least not the scientific family name. It gives some of the common family names. So the family name for this one is called the Cupressaceae. 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 And that's probably the only one that we will have in that family. So Thuya plicata, western red cedar, Cupressaceae. When you're learning these plants, you need to learn the common name, scientific name, and the family. When we have our quizzes, that's what you will have to identify. All right, so let's look at another one. Another common tree that we have in our area. So let's see what we can do in the key. Are the leaves needle-like or scale-like? Yes. Go to 2. Leaves scale-like? No, because that's what we just looked at. These are different. They are more needle-like. So we're going to go to 2B, leaves needle-like, not concealing the twig. You can see the twig in there. Needles in clusters or needles not in clusters. So if you look at these, they are not in clusters. There's just one needle at a time on these branches. We'll look at one in clusters in just a minute. So then you have to decide, are the needles stalkless, 6A, needles stalkless, or go to 6B, needles stalked. That means, are they attached to the twig with a little stalk, a little petiole, or do they sit flush against the twig? And these do have a tiny little stalk, a little bit hard to see if I get really close up, but a tiny little stalk. So we're going with 6B, needles stalked. Then are the stalks, do the stalks fall with the needles? Seed cones have a prominent 3-pronged bract, and I have a cone for us here to look at, because this is another good feature to identify this plant with. And you see that it does have this 3-pronged bract. Sometimes it's referred to as little mouse feet sticking out of the cone. So that is a good key characteristic to know that you have found our Douglas fir. So if you follow that across, it is Pseudotsuga menziesii. That's a big long mouthful of a name for its scientific name. Pseudotsuga menziesii. and it is going to be in the Pinaceae family. Pinaceae, Pinaceae family. So this is our Douglas fir, Pseudotsuga menziesii, Pinaceae. All right, let's look at another one that is a very common tree that we will see frequently, and if you notice, it looks a lot similar to our Douglas fir that we just saw. Its leaves are very similar, but its cones are very different. So that will be a characteristic you can use to identify. So let's look at the key. These leaves needle-like, yes. Leaves scale-like, no. Leaves needle-like, so 2B. Needles in clusters, no. So 4B. Needles not in clusters, needles stalkless. And if we look at these very closely, again, a little hard to see, but they do have a tiny little stalk. So needles stalked. Stalks fall with needles, seed cones with those three-pronged bracts. No, this cone does not have that three-pronged bract. So we go to 10B. Stalks or part of them remain after the needles fall. So if you feel some of the old twigs, they're kind of rough down here where some of the old stalks are still attached. Needles four-sided, stiff, sharp pointed. No, these are pretty soft. So needles two-sided, not stiff. And you can see if you feel them, they are two-sided. So 12. Needles of equal lengths, apparently alternate, sharp pointed, or needles of different lengths, opposite or spirally arranged. So this is another way to identify this and what it's named for, actually. If you notice down in here, again, it's going to be hard to see. There are actually two different lengths of needles. Some of them are a little bit longer and some of them are a little bit shorter. So get some when you can look at it up close at home and find those different lengths of needles in there. So when we get back to the key and we take the different lengths, 12B, then are they flat in 2 rows or sort of half round, keeled beneath like a boat? No, these were flat, and they often refer to them as being in 2 rows, but they aren't always exactly like that. 2 rows means that they should be coming off on either side of the branch, making the branch appear sort of flattened, but these are kind of sticking up. So this is a characteristic that can vary with this plant, so I wouldn't go by that alone as a characteristic. But if we follow that across, here's the cones, 2 to 3 centimeters long. We do see those. We see these white lines of stomata. That's the pores in the leaf on the underside. So if you flip some of these over, there's those white lines underneath. So this is Tsuga heterophylla. Heterophylla means different leaves, so referring to that 2 different types of leaves. And this is the western hemlock, a common tree in our area, and it is also in the family Pinaceae, along with Douglas fir. So western hemlock, Tsuga heterophylla, that T is silent, so Tsuga heterophylla, Pinaceae family. All right, here's another one. We see again some needle-like leaves. So when we look at the key, we're going to be still under 1A over here with leaves needle-like. And we're going to go to 2B for those needle-like leaves. Now, are they in clusters or not in clusters? So let's take a look at these. And if you look down here where they attach, there's 2 needles attached together in what's called this fascicle. And that's a key characteristic for this group of plants, the pines. The needles are going to be wrapped in this fascicle, and you have to look and see how many are in a fascicle together. So here we go. I'll lay it over here. You can see those 2 in a fascicle. So we need to look then under 2B. They are in clusters, so we go to 5. Needles in clusters of 5. No. Are they in clusters of 2? Yes. So that tells us this is Pinus contorta, which is our shore pine. Pinus contorta, the shore pine, also in the Pinaceae family. As you can see, I have one of its cones here. Smallish, but very stiff cones, not nearly as soft as some of the Douglas fir or western hemlock cones. So our Pinus contorta, shore pine. It's called contorta because these needles are twisted. So when you look at those needles, they twist as they come out of that fascicle rather than being just straight. Getting a little windy. All right, here's another one that we see needle-like leaves. So we can kind of, now that we're getting used to the key, we can skip ahead a little bit, and we know it's going to be needles in clusters. And if we look at these, they are the ones that are in clusters of 5. Pull that off, and you can see 5 in that cluster. So this tells us it is Pinus monticola, which is our western white pine. White pine because it has these sort of whitish lines on the needles, similar to the western hemlock also had them. White pine, western white pine, Pinus monticola, also in the Pinaceae family. All right, so that is all of the ones that we consider the gymnosperms, or the evergreens that we have around this area, or conifers, because they produce cones. I didn't have a cone for the western white pine. It has a much bigger cone than that shore pine cone, so a western white pine would be probably about this long, rather than just the little shore pine. It's a very long cone and softer, not as stiff as that shore pine. But let's see if we can get, I think I've got one more tree. I may not have all the parts we need to really key it out, but let's see what happens. All right, so now if you notice, we're looking at something that is a broadleaf, not a needle or scale. So it's going to be no to 1A, and we're going to go to 1B. Leaves broad, although they're not deciduous. This is not one of the deciduous ones. So 14A, bark peeling or bark not peeling. Now, you can't see the whole tree because I only got the branch. But you notice this reddish bark down here, and if you look at the whole tree, further down on the tree, this reddish bark starts to peel off. So this is a peeling bark. So then we go to 15A, leaves evergreen. Yes, these are evergreen, leathery, and that red bark. So that tells us it is Arbutus menziesii. Arbutus menziesii. We see another menziesii here. Douglas fir, remember, was Pseudotsuga menziesii. This is Arbutus menziesii, which is our Pacific madrone tree, or madrona. And it is in the family Ericaceae, E-R-I-C-A-C-E-A-E, which is the same family as the blueberry family, Ericaceae. So Arbutus menziesii, Pacific madrone. And let's see if this one will work. Yep. So here's another piece of tree I collected. So again, also broad leaves. So we go to leaves broad, but it doesn't have the peeling bark. So we're going to go down to bark not peeling. Fruit is a pome. That's like an apple. And I do have some fruits on this tree, and you notice it is kind of like a cone. It is not like an apple. So we're going to take the other way in this key, although that is not a true cone because it's not a conifer plant, but it is actually a nutlet type of fruit from this plant, from this tree. So the leaves, let's see, oh, go back over. Fruits, pomes, no. So 16B, fruits various, but not like apples. Leaves compound, that means they're divided into leaflets. No, these are not. These are simple leaves. So that is 18B. Leaves lobed. No, these are not lobed. They're toothed. So we're going to go to 19B. Leaves opposite, smooth margined, or alternate, distinctly toothed. We're going to talk about alternate and opposite later, but you can see these are actually alternate. They're alternating up the stem, and we can see that they are toothed. So that tells us, we go to 22A, fruit persistent, a cone-like catkin, leaves with double-toothed margins. Yes, that is what we saw with that fruit. So this is Alnus rubra, a red alder, a common tree, again in our area. We're learning lots of the common things to start with. So this is red alder, Alnus rubra, with that cone-like looking fruit. And the family is Betulaceae family, B-E-T-U-L-A-C-E-A-E, Betulaceae. All right, I think that's all I have that will go through the key, but I do have a few others I wanted to help you learn this week. We'll look at this plant, which is a common shrub you probably recognize from our area. Probably see it planted around, and we have it growing native as well. So this is our rhododendron, macrophyllum, or macrophyllum is the scientific name. Pacific rhododendron is common name, and it is also in the family Ericaceae, so the same thing as the blueberry family and the Pacific madrone. So again, you notice it has evergreen, sort of leathery leaves. They're also kind of sticky, especially when they're younger. These are kind of not sticky anymore. So that's another characteristic that you might see sometimes. They've got those thicker leaves, evergreen, and then they're past flowering, but this is the fruit, the little capsule type of fruit that is developing where the flowers were, and it will have its seeds inside once they mature. So rhododendron macrophyllum, which means big leaf, the big leaf rhododendron, in the Ericaceae family. And another shrub that you probably see a lot is our native salal, which is Gaultheria ovatifolia. Gaultheria, G-A-U-L-T-H-E-R-I-A. Oh, sorry, Chalon, not ovatifolia. That's the other one. Chalon. Here's one of my little note cards. You can see how I make myself note cards. You might want to try this for yourself as well. Gaultheria Chalon, S-H-A-L-L-O-N. Also in the family Ericaceae. So along with the blueberries, we're going to see lots of those, as well as the rhododendron and the Pacific madrone. You can see the flower on the salal right now. And this is a typical sort of blueberry-shaped flower. Now, when the rhododendron blooms, it has a different shaped flower, not the more typical blueberry-shaped flower. We'll talk about flower shapes later on, but notice that there. And then it's going to make its little berries, of course, over the summer as that goes on. Also, evergreen leaves, kind of thick and leathery. Also, alternate leaves. And one more common plant that we see a lot is our sword fern. And here, I've got a long one. So our sword fern, which is Polystichum, P-O-L-Y-S-T-H-I-U-M, munitum, M-U-N-I-T-U-M, the sword fern. Polystichum unitum, and it's in the fern group, but its family name is the Dryopteridaceae. D-R-Y-O-P-T-E-R. Oh, here, you can look at this. O-P-T-E-R-I-D-A-C-E-A-E. Dryopteridaceae. Sword fern. So it has pinnate or compound leaves. This is all one leaf, and these are the individual leaflets, and some other ferns have even more leaflets than these do. This is an evergreen fern, so it keeps its leaves all year round and then puts out new ones in the spring. And on the back side of most ferns, you will see the spores. These little brown dots are the clusters of spores on the back of this sword fern. So ferns reproduce by spores rather than reproducing by seeds like gymnosperms and angiosperms do. All right, so I think that is all I have for you on our first little field trip. You can see my pile. Maybe you can start collecting a few things and identifying, practice using that key, and see what else you can find to go through with that key, or some other keys that are in the book as well, and work on those scientific names. Until next time.